very much. Thanks for that introduction. Now, is there a trick to make it? There we go. A lot of times, as you said, I started off my career at 17 as a combat swimmer. So your day starts in an escape hatch of a submarine. With this, a lot of what we do as combat swimmers is you look at these compasses. And a big part of what I'm going to talk about today is the value of using a compass. The compass that you see here, you're basically using these diving rigs that have no bubbles. It's pitch black, it's at night, and you're swimming for 3 miles looking at this compass. You come to shore, you do whatever, whoopsie, jumped ahead a little bit. You come to shore and you basically have your operation with your team, and then you go back to the submarine. Now, you come from a submarine, it's pretty easy to find the shore. The submarine pulls in, and you've got basically an azimuth on that compass you look at to get to shore. So you leave the escape hatch of the submarine, you swim to shore, and you do whatever operation you're going to do on shore, which is usually kind of nefarious probably, but it's reconnaissance, a snatch, a hit, whatever the thing is they have you doing, putting a bomb on somebody else's ship. So, and then you take a compass and you swim back in the ocean. Now, the ocean's a big place. It's hard to find that submarine out in the middle of the ocean. So what happens is the divers, they have a rope they string between the two divers. At least this is how we did it 30 and 40 years ago. I'm sure that SEALs now are a little bit more sophisticated. You have a prearranged depth in the ocean that you're going to meet the submarine at, and you start clanging on the back of your tanks with your knife. And the submarine hears these two clinks, and they, in their sonar, and they basically raise their periscope, and then they go between the two dots on the screen. That's how they pick you up. The submarine comes along, and it's going about 2 to 3 knots, picks you up. You hand over. There's a rope at the periscope that leads you back into the escape hatch. There's usually other ropes with extra bottles of for air, and that's basically how you get picked up after a sub-op. And there's a lot of points of failure in this, as you can imagine. And there's a lot of rope. So that, oops, let me get back here. Am I holding this too long when I do that? I'm gonna go back. Right there's where I want to be. So that's me when I still had hair. There's ropes all over the place ready to go in the submarine. This is actually a submarine op that I had some issues with. So we're getting ready to go on the boat. There was 6 divers. We done our thing. This is practicing. We do most of this at night, but we practice during the daytime too. You just can't do it wrong. And as I'm getting ready to go in the submarine, the submarine jolted forward quickly, like really fast. And submarines can go very fast. So I'm being drugged by the submarine with my partner looking at each other, and we're holding on to this rope, and it becomes evident we can't hold on anymore because it is going faster and faster and faster. We both look at each other in the eyes, and we shake our heads, and we let go of the rope. And I'm worried about these things at the other end of the submarine, you know, being swept into the propeller. So I start swimming up as fast as I can, and right here I'm next to this conning tower. Suddenly, I'm hit by the conning tower, and this submarine's probably going 30 knots at this point. So it's very traumatic, and boom. And then I'm in a washing machine. Well, it turns out I got tangled in all those ropes. So this is back in 1979, and what had happened is I'm tangled in the ropes. I'm going to ride this out, and I'm trying to breathe, and then it goes faster and faster. My mask is plucked off my face. My life vest is plucked off. My hose is taken out of my mouth. The tanks slide up, and I'm struggling. I get that hose. I put it back in my mouth, take a couple breaths, but because of the force of the water going backward through the regulator, I can't take a breath. So then, I take my knife out. I try to cut myself free. The force of the water is just pushing my arms down. I'm methodically trying to untangle myself. I'm struggling with no air. And there's that point where, been through this, Navy Dave training's pretty rigorous. I think I know what I can do. Point by point, I start working, but then the world starts closing in on me. Tunnel vision. I'm dead. I'm drowning. This is how I end. I'm going to see Jesus. The year before, another man had drowned in similar circumstances. We lost a lot of people in training back in the day. In fact, we still do. So it gets to the point where I'm just striving, forcing myself to stay awake. It takes a conscious effort. When you're drowning, if anybody's had a near drowning experience, I've actually had a couple. There's a point where that struggle goes away, and it all comes to, you become sleepy, and just go to sleep, and it's all the pain goes away. So I struggle that last bit, and I'm free. I'm free from the sub. So I start swinging to the surface, and that tunnel vision goes away. I'm gonna live. I break. I dive up. I swim. Hit the surface. It was sunshine outside. That deep breath. The most precious taste of anything in my whole life is that breath of fresh air. I'm gonna live. Shot my flare up. They picked me up well over a mile from my dive partner. I was without air probably for 3 to 4 minutes. And that's my sub-op story. So I still get sweaty palms talking about today. And it'd be an interesting story if that's all there was to it. But there's a backstory to it. You see, that's not the first time I'd been tied up without air. The Navy, part of dive training, they tie up your hands and legs, throw you in the pool, and you have to, first they tread water for 20 minutes, then you tread water with your arms tied, then your feet tied, and then your hands and feet tied. So you got to, by this time you're pretty tired, about 2 hours into it. And so you get comfortable with that. Also, they have you do things like take a breath hold dive going down into a 15-foot training tank and take apart and put together a machine gun on a breath hold. And you're trying to force yourself not to hit the surface, otherwise they'll kick you out of the course. And the machine gun must be put together correctly, able to work. So they take you through these training it's pretty rigorous. In fact, they'll have weeks and weeks of harassment training where they yank the hose out of your mouth. They turn the air off. They'll slug you in the stomach. They rip your mask off. Just almost over-the-top violence with this. And you look at this, it seems pretty violent. But I look back now, I was like, thank God that I went through that, because I'd already been through something pretty traumatic, similar to being tied on the side of the submarine. So I have an adage: we always train in preparation for your worst day, not your average day. And I'll talk a little bit more about this. Like today, as Carl said, unexpectedly I was called to go testify. We have 3 crises popping up at the same time. But I know my team, we have 300 employees. I know every one of them knows their job to do tomorrow morning. Whether I'm there or I'm not, they're there. And the ones who are in Cascade and have assignments, they will do the same thing they would have done whether we had a program, a disaster or not. So I'm trained in preparation for my worst day. They know what to do day in, day out. The ship runs whether I'm there or not, whether I'm distracted or not. I really am into compasses. And Cascade has turned out to be our compass to turn this voice that we're using. That's the metaphor that I'm going to go with my talk today. So we want to keep the focus on strategy. We talk a lot about strategy. As most of us who do strategic planning know, most people out there don't understand what it is. They confuse goals with a strategy. So one of the things I would like to point out, I have very few slides that have words on them, by the way. So by not focus on your priorities, you become reactionary. And so we lose our grip on your priorities and strategy. Events will come and continue to distract you, robbing you of opportunity to stick to your strategic plan. You focus on tactics versus strategies. And most of us by nature are tacticians, not strategists. So we always, when I talk about what I did in the Navy, I was a tactics guy. So it's easy for us to always go back to being tactical when you should be strategic. You focus on tactics versus that. And to recover from this, you need to create space and think strategically. And I think that's kind of what you've tried to create here is in this symposium, is a space for us to sit back and think strategically. And also we need to look to our compass. So I come from Parker University. It's a small university in Dallas, Texas. I was hired 3 years ago. It's all healthcare related. When I got there, we had 1,000 students. We now have 1,500. We've been able to experience double-digit growth in an industry that's flatlined and actually declining, and we expect to have several colleges to go out of business in the next several years. Go back one, sorry. It's pretty sensitive. Okay, healthcare related, fields. We have 26 healthcare-related fields. Used to be chiropractic was our only program, but now we have 25 other programs. We'll have 30 in the next few years. But what we did is we got together. George Linscott was our facilitator. Came out, and we had our retreat. And somebody was talking about, well, what about a small organization that doesn't have time for a 3-day, strategic planning session? I actually think you need to make time for this. If you don't have a clear-cut map, if you don't have that strategy, you're not going to be able to get where you want to go. And by us taking the time to, that really jumps. If I could have you trade out my advancer, which is in that bag up there, if somebody could get that, I think it'd be a little more easy to work with. We went off-site. We had we were led through this process of creating a strategic plan, a 3-day process. We started off with doing a SWOT analysis. That's a bag. A SWOT analysis. Everybody knows this: strengths, weaknesses, opportunity, threats. And we really went into this, and we looked at our strengths. It was real evident. These are the things that we do better than anybody else out there. Our weaknesses, and George had us spend almost an entire day talking about our weaknesses, and then opportunities and threats. Then he came back and said, okay, this is what you're already doing really well. You're going to blast this. This is naturally a good thing that you're doing, the good things you're doing. This is your parachute, the thing that's almost like a drag on you. You need to concentrate on this. And we went in, of course, to opportunities and threats. But really, to mitigate our weaknesses, we got together, and after spending a couple days putting this together, our strategic plan almost wrote itself. It became very evident to us that is what we really. Was it in there? I'm sorry, I must have left it in my room. So anyway, we wrote the strategic plan. This plan was in a document. Now, it's just paper until you bring it to life. But we printed this out, and I went ahead and presented our strategic plan to all of our employees, 300 employees, even down to the custodial staff. And our university is such that one of our goals was to really enhance the image of the institution, make it warm and friendly and welcoming, so that the person who cares for our fountain came up to me and goes, you know what? I've been here for 30 years. This is the first time I really understood where my job fits in the strategic plan. And I want to make it where everybody in my institution understands what their job is. So we print these up. And what happens is that by sticking to the plan, we prioritize everything we're going to do to get to where we want to go in 5 years. Now, I understand we actually are trying to switch our budget cycle to 6-month cycles because it happens so fast. We go ahead, it innovates, it changes so quick, and the world changes so quick that a 5-year plan is almost wishful thinking. Now, having said that, we look like our 5-year plan may be finished in 2 years by putting it in the Cascade. Now, a strategic plan is a map. It tells you your goals and how to get there. And as you follow your strategic plan, you find where you are on the map along the way. So many of us think of goals or aspirations or vision statements or the strategy, but really a strategic plan is you start here and you get there, and this is how you do it. And you should be able to look at the map and say, we're right here, right now, with your compass and map. We really embrace the Cascade model for creating this hierarchy of our plan. And we start on our offsite, of course, we went to our vision statements, our values, focus areas, and then we got down to our strategic objectives. And then from that, we went ahead and let our workers, our directors, create the goals and put the flesh to this. And we don't want to micromanage these type of events, but this, for us, was a really good tool. Cascade provided to us. We loved it. Of course, it's in the ebook, which we all read, ebooks. And we let our team put together the strategic plan, which is really not a piece of a document, but it's a living document within the Cascade network. So as we're educating our team, we want them to know what is meant by cascading your strategy. So basically, you have these sequential steps that take place in parallel. I think, what was the word that you used, Mark? That sequence that you like, where there's a synchronization, or basically, a lot of things happen at the same time. But simultaneity. So you have all these things that have to take place in sequence through a cascade to get down to here to complete that 5-year plan. If this doesn't happen, you can't go to the next thing. So they have to come together. And then what happens is everybody has access to well, we grant access to certain things to everybody, other things not. But if somebody working on this side says, you know what, there's a synergy. If we work together, we can actually knock out this plan together. And as we prioritize the projects we'd like to do, we look at our basically our focus areas. When there's 3 focus areas that cross over, we're doing that next. We're going to prioritize that, something we need to do right away, because we'll have the biggest bang for our buck with that. And those who've used Cascade understand these dashboards and how we work this. So we have our focus areas that we put together. This is what we're going to work on, and we assign tasks to this. Now, one of my areas is, recruiting for our CIS degree, cybersecurity degree, and I look up here and the color tells me, hey, it's not happening. Something's not happening. I can click on that and go all the way down the cascade to find out that Bob over here took a month off to go on vacation, and he didn't meet his numbers. So then I should probably use the levers that I have. You know what? I should shift somebody else over to take over for Bob when he's gone. So that cascade and the ability to follow that gives me the opportunity to use all the tools at my disposal. And I love this picture. I got it in Budapest when I was there last year. But to make things happen, you push levers, you push buttons, you turn knobs. That's what leaders have at their disposal. When you have the data where you stand, you can make those shifts. You can push the lever like, hey, I need to put somebody else in recruiting to make up for that shortfall. It gives me the information I need to make decisions up top. But also it empowers the people who are in the organization to make decisions without coming to me. So why Cascade? It's great at project and task management. It's really good at that. We can focus on what really matters. We put it in the system. Does it matter? We've all come together. We've made those discussions. We actually can put metrics and milestones and deadlines for each goal. And we're a strong metrics-driven organization, though that is not my strength. I'm not a project manager. I'm not an MBA. I'm a chiropractor who's had leadership responsibilities thrust upon him. So even though I'm not a metrics person, I live and die by metrics. My predecessor was a metrics person. He loved them so much he spent all of his time dealing with spreadsheets. And I'll tell you, that's probably not the best way to work. In fact, I know it's not the best way to work. Also, Cascade automatically flags which goals are at risk for missing a deadline. So if I go down, I don't have to go digging around. It pops up. It tells me where I need to go. And also, silos will fall and workers will collaborate. It helps to prioritize our efforts, and accountability is assigned and measured. If something doesn't get done, I know who to go to. I can go talk to Carl. You kind of missed this deadline here. What's the problem here? So you know who to go to. And with it, you're accountable to all other 300 people in our organization. So I better get this done, especially if you've got this sequential cascade that if you don't get your thing done in time, we can't go to the next thing. And it has very easy to read dashboards. That's what I like the best, because like I said, I'm not that project management type person. Now our results have been double-digit growth last 3 years in an industry that, like I said, is flat or declining. In fact, at this point, we're shopping for other campuses and things like that, as we know that our competition, especially in liberal arts schools, they're struggling to stay in business. Very few new colleges are taking place. In fact, when I talk to the companies that manage software solutions for universities, they're all fighting for the same market. And the conventional wisdom in these companies is they're not making more colleges. They'll close a few. So if you lose something to a competitor, you're probably not going to ever get them back. But we were experiencing some pretty significant growth in our organization. Also, when I first got there were silos. I mean, you couldn't get stuff done. There's strong silos. By having a tool and having everybody, and I've spoken to everybody in my institution about a strategic plan. They all know it, or if they don't, I need to go back and talk to them. Our new hires get it. You understand where you all fit together and how you should be able to reach across, not at the highest levels of the silos, but even at a lower level, that, hey, we can work together. So what we've found now is we have silos that are able to, they're bridges across, so people can get together. The IT department will go over, I see that you've got this problem over in academics. Well, I've got an IT solution for that. I can come over. In fact, if we work together, you help me get some of my goals knocked out, and we can have synergy here. So by having, the more you communicate it, the word transparency came up from Mark. The more transparent the plan is, the more people can collaborate, and they get those synergies together. So we replaced spreadsheets with a living, interactive, real-time tool. And I don't know how, if you guys use Excel in your at work. I excel at work. My predecessor had hundreds, if not thousands, of key performance indicators on a spreadsheet. And once you put that together, it's a dead document. You have, every time, it only comes to life when you go in and interact with it. It's an absolute waste of time. A living document is that if we have all these key performance indicators with people assigned to it, with an assignment to it, that when you've completed it, you go in there and you can complete it, or you put comments, you can communicate. Now you're moving forward. It's not an Excel and somebody's computer. It's accessible to everybody. We move forward. And I have found that very valuable. So no spreadsheets. We're getting in our way. Even in our financial department, we're trying to get away from spreadsheets. So spreadsheets and Excel, if that's the way you're managing, I will say Cascade is far superior to that. Using these graphics and these dashboards, we found it very valuable for us to make it, like for me, this person who's not the numbers geek, I have CFOs who'll bring in these large packets with all our budget on it. This is ridiculous. I can't even read it through their spreadsheets. We prefer to create dashboards that are easy to read, can have timelines on those. Again, these can cascade down responsibilities all the way down to the lowest person in the organization. I shouldn't say lowest, but the person down the chain. And of course, I love it when you have something like needs attention up here. Okay, I took out that employee's name. She didn't want me to to put it there. But basically, there's a problem. It tells you. On Monday morning, I can have a cup of coffee, and I can go down through Cascade and let's see how does the institution going today. When my direct reports come in, we have them up on their dashboards on my giant screen TV in my office. We talk about that. When we do reviews of employees, we go back to this. So it's easy to say, to someone, are you making your mark? Are you fulfilling the plan that we had designed for you in the institution? So if you're doing employee reviews, this is a valuable tool, and you either did the job or you didn't. It's very specific, and it helps people who are weak managers to manage better, because they have to make sure their employees have tasks that are very specific and measurable. So that's the key to this too, is being specific, measurable, have a time frame on them. So, and one of the things that we're doing in our 5-year plan, we have growth involved, we've got building projects, but there's something, this is our aspirational goal, the Parker Neuroscience Center. I've worked at Walter Reed, I've worked in the White House. We've had a lot of TBI patients come back, and there's a very large number of highly functional kids or students who are moving into the workforce, highly functional, but yet they have neurological conditions, various degrees of autism, or compulsive disorders that they can go to work, but how do you maintain them? How do you support them during their career, so extract as much value out of them and give them as much value back as possible? We have the aspirational goal to create this neuroscience center that reaches out to them with non-pharmaceutical treatments to help them be better at what they do and live a more fulfilled life. That's our aspirational goal, which I always keep bringing back to the workers, my board, our partners. And Mark talked about managing board meetings. I was in the board of trustees, and we were very strategic in that board. I had a little bit of a battle with my board when I first got here for the first couple of years. And the difference is they get distracted. And we want to go ahead and keep the board focused on strategic objectives, on strategy, and keep them away from shiny objects. You know, hey, Bill, I read this article about blah, 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 blah. Or I saw this thing on YouTube, and da, 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 da. Or my buddies on Facebook were complaining about the direction of the institution, and we should do. So we've taken that away. We've got them involved in the strategic planning. They understand that strategic plan. So right now, we want them to be focused on the dashboards that they've all agreed to measure. These are the measurements that you measure me by. We use these dashboards, and it's easy for them to understand. So our board meetings are shorter, they're more focused, we're concentrating on the strategy. And if they have a question about something else, well, strategic plan, that's where we're going, the strategic plan in Cascade. So now that my board wants in, they want access to Cascade as well. So that anytime they can go in and see how we're doing. So I need to talk to you about limiting how we limit access. But partially I meant. But you know, keeping the focus on what's important, not wandering around. It's created the discipline of a strategic plan of doing the right things and not getting, you know, off into the weeds over different things. And again, I always keep bringing back to them our aspirational goal. We're doing all these other things. We're growing the institution. We've got these other programs we're adding. We're raising money for our aspirational goal, but also always bringing it back to them. And I always like to bring this picture back to them that here's the thing we're going to take a picture of in 5 years that we're going to be able to look back on. This is a great thing we did. So that the people at work can work. So if the board's focusing on strategy, the factory workers, the people in the boiler room can get to work, and they don't have to worry about people tinkering or changing directions all the time. Our course is set. We're going this direction. And in fact, every day we go by, it picks up speed. We're going faster and faster towards our destination. Command intent versus micromanagement. Now, my background is military, so I always like to bring these military examples, and as Mark says, strategy, which is literally means the art of the general, that's where it comes from. We want to make sure that we empower folks, that you don't dictate to them how they're going to do their job, but you empower them to. So command intent, I love this example. So if you can see, this is a topographical map of some place in the world. And if you were to tell your recon team, which is my background, not SEAL, I was in Marine Recon, though I was embedded in a SEAL team for a period, that we're going to put you in at this lake, you're going to travel down this road, take this trail up, you're going to hit this target here, and come back out the same way. And you're very specific on your goals to them. What happens is, and you have to take this exact route. At any point, there's a barrier, the mission's aborted, because you took away all discretion from them. But if I said, come on now. All right. If I said, at your discretion, I want you to go in, hit this target, and come back. At your discretion, we'll pick you up here, we'll drop you off there. Then if they're doing their thing, oh, there's guards at this point on the road. Go back, rethink it, go a different route. The mission gets accomplished. If you over-dictate how to get the job done, you take away the joy of creativity from your workers, and it does, and likelihood of them having to stop and come back for more direction comes back to you. So the best example of this being successful, I think, is D-Day in World War II. 100,000 paratroopers dropped across France. Their goals, their mission was, your team is going to grab this bridge and deny the Nazis the ability to blow that bridge up so that our troops can use that bridge. Your team is going to grab this crossroads to make sure that you hold it till the tanks from the beach get up there. Your goal is to make sure they don't blow this levee. Well, what happens when they landed, there was such a confusion, there was units spread all over France. So you had people from different countries, let alone different units, next together. You meet up. Who are you from? I'm English. I'm French resistance. I'm this. They all met together. And like, well, my mission is 20 miles that way. I can't make it to that bridge in time. Well, here's a bridge. The command intent was we hold the bridges, the dikes, the crossroads in Normandy. So they didn't need to know that. Then the people in charge would say, okay, we're not going to be able to hold our bridge, but we're going to hold this bridge. It was great. They all knew the big picture enough so the mission could be accomplished. They could hold those bridges. That's the difference between micromanagement and giving discretion. Command intent. You give the command intent, not that so many details that they're paralyzed by it. And that's one of the successes of the D-Day landing. Come on. There we go. So with it, I like this illustration here. Your workers, if you just tell them the goal, they'll find a way. They'll break through the wall, they'll go under the wall, they'll go over the wall, but give them the discretion to find their own way. I worked in the White House and in the Capitol on 9/11. In fact, I was in the Capitol at a Capitol clinic the day 9/11 occurred. I could see the smoke rising from the Pentagon. I had lost patients and friends of mine in the Pentagon attack. The admiral in charge of my clinic at the Capitol said, "Hey, doc, your clinic's been canceled." I said, "Well, I was a combat medic. I can start IVs. I can do battle dressings." He goes, "Great. Join that ambulance team. We're taking the government into seclusion." And so we went on. So as I went on, what happened that day, of course, was terrible. The Pentagon. Well, what happened after this, if you recall, I flew the next day. They had tables out. I was in Las Vegas, so they had all these tables. They're going through everybody's luggage. You can imagine the weird things people bring to Las Vegas out there in front of everybody. It's pretty entertaining, actually. But then, so we were reacting. Then everybody gets searched. They overreacted, and then there was an anthrax attack again at the Capitol. And then the poison rancid, I think is what it's called, that attack at the Capitol. And of course, at this point, the only things they all have in common was me, so I was getting a little nervous. So I had patients who had exposed to anthrax. Then we had the snipers in Washington, D.C., the sniper attacks. And it was becoming very reactive. Our leadership was reacting like the boy trying to plug the holes in the dike. So they knew that all it would have taken at that point would be somebody to go after a water supply. One of our adversaries poison a water supply, poison a fluid supply, and do something big like that. And the next thing you'd have to be so reactive, you'd have to mobilize the National Guard to defend all of our water supplies, to defend fields of food. We were becoming very reactionary. And whether it was right or wrong, we went to war at that point. So what happens when you're being reactionary, you have to do something to reestablish the incentive. You'd never want to have the place where you lose the initiative. You have no wiggle room. Once you've lost the ability to maneuver, you enter into a war of attrition. It's like the World War I. There's a point where the great armies came together and both sides, the Allies and the Germans, lost initiative. They dug trenches and they pounded it out. And what happens is it's equivalent to a trench warfare when you lose initiative. All maneuvering is taken away. We enter into a war of attrition. Basically, you slug it out until the other guys are all dead. You never want to let your organization get to a place where you lose the initiative. Agility and tactics are bogged down in muddy terrain. So you need to keep the initiative. A good example of doing it right is what happened after the space race. In 1957, the Soviets launched the Sputnik. This is in the height of the Cold War. Assured mutual destruction is the strategy of the day. And so the Russians launched a satellite. We hurriedly launch another satellite. They launch a bigger one. We launch another one. They put an animal into space. We put an animal into space. They put a man into space. We put a man into space. We were reactive. President Kennedy in 1961 seized the initiative, and he created a strategic plan. He had a goal. Basically, the goal is very well defined. The United States will put a man on the moon and return him safely to the Earth, very specific goal, by the end of this decade, very specific time frame. In the speech he gave, he didn't explain the strategy. The strategy was to put the money into science to develop multi-stage rockets that increasing payloads to the point until you get one large enough to create a vessel that could travel to the moon and back again. Very specific, well-funded, defined. That's the goal. That's what we want to see for a strategic plan. That everybody knows what it's about. That's how you get there. Brilliant. That's a successful strategic plan compared to the Vietnam War. The goal was a negative goal, to stop the spread of communism. There wasn't positive there. There was no picture of the end, and there was no end to the war. And what's worse than that is these guys created the metric, the worst possible metric. You talked about the art of war. The best strategy is not to fight. Their metric they chose for that war was body counts. It's monstrous. The worst goal you could ever pick. So it dragged on and on with no vision for success. How could you win a war that was unwinnable? There was no goals to it. Utter disaster. So wayfinding and the value of the compass. I'm going to go back to my roots of being a combat swimmer and using the compass. I think I've described that Cascade is our compass that we're using to navigate our strategic plan. It's not the strategic plan. It's a tool that we hold ourselves on course with. When I was in the Navy, another ops, besides the submarine ops, was this parachute ops. Turn that down a little bit. So, parachute out. So you parachute down, and you basically have chem glow sticks on the boat, and you have chem glow sticks on the back of your helmet. So as you parachute, it's all done at night. So you follow those glow sticks in. You follow the boat down. Actually, you wait till the boat its parachute opens up, because if it doesn't open up, it stops out, because you don't want to be out in the middle of the ocean without a boat. So you parachute down, hit that boat. It lands, and we rig it. It takes a while to unrig it, because we make it work and take an impact. All your rifles, your bombs, your dive gear are in the boat. You rig the boat, and then we get in it, and you take this boat from 40 miles out in the ocean using a compass. You travel over land, and the water's not that smooth ever, I guarantee it. That, of all the things I've done in the military, those boat rides were like, you know what, I can handle the parachute, I can handle the mountain climbing, the running, everything. Those boat rides, I've had enough of those. So at 3 miles out, you put divers in the water, and they swim in the surface for 1.5 miles. And then at 1.5 miles out, you go underwater. Come on now. I think it jumped on me. So, and all you can see is that compass. It's utter black out there. The compass is everything. You trust it. Your buddy squeezes your arm when it's time to change directions, but that's all you can see in the utter darkness. And you swear you're going around in circles, in really tight circles. It's crazy, because you're weightless. There's no sense of orientation from light. You hit the beach. You come out on the beach. Found the objective. Come back out. Compass swim out. 1.5 miles underwater again. you meet your boat. The boat goes way out in the ocean, 25 miles. You don't have to go as far out this time because you're going to a submarine. So you don't have to hide your parachuting in. And everybody gets out of the boat. We either scuttle it or we deflate it, stick it back in the boat. You go back in the submarine. So pretty amazing accomplishment. You've traveled 70 miles, 80 miles at night from a point to a target back to a point in the ocean using a compass. It really is, in one night, it's amazing. It's an amazing feat of navigation. Plus the navigation once you're on the beach. So what we did to show the value of the compass with the instructors at the dive school was they took us out one night, no compass at night, 150 yards between ships. Kick off the ship, just swim 150 yards, touch the ship that's across from you. Nobody in that group could make it to that target. When you rely on your own senses, without a compass, without a sense of direction, you just wander around. So it's one of those things I learned in life that you need to have orientation. You need to have that compass, that thing that drives you, that you can always refer back to. This is true north. This is where we should be going. So what I find here with Cascade, and how I'll finish this talk, is Cascade is a tool. It's a compass that's allowed us to give life to our strategic plan, and we measure it. And you can always go back to it. So are we off track? Are we going towards that ultimate goal? Carl, thank you for having me. So. Okay.
That 150 meter was awesome at the end there.
Yeah, it's true. It's you do it. It's like, oh my gosh, when you think you're going straight, you're not.
Wow.
You're relying on your own senses.
Oh, sorry. Let's move over here so they can take pretty pictures of you.
Okay.
So, so we have a few moments, and he literally after this has to fly back, unfortunately, to Texas to speak to a legislator session tomorrow. But any questions for Bill that just about this, any part of whether it be military or strategy or Cascade, please raise your hand. I'll ask one thing. So, okay, so some of that you were talking about was quite a ways. How much has the technology changed?
Oh, you talk about the sub-ops?
Yes, yeah.
Now they have these. We had mini subs back then that was literally like getting locked in the trunk of a car and fill it with water. They have some pretty high-end navigational systems now, and usually they use mini subs to get you in now. So they still do a lot of that. I don't know how if they do the catch with the rope anymore because I've lost contact. That's kind of probably classified anyway.
Yeah, interesting.
So.
You were nice enough to talk about some leaders and whether they chose good goals, bad goals, or got down into the details. Comment on any one of the three, Zuckerberg, Musk, or Bezos as leaders.
Gosh, Amazon's been crazy. I mean, the strategic plan to go from losing money for years and years and years to being the most wealthy person in the world, he played the long game. I think Elon Musk is very visionary. He may be distracted by shiny objects a bit, but he definitely has incredible insight and guts to say we're going to take off. We're going to basically mine a meteorite, whether it can happen or not. I think he was, by having PayPal, of course, he gets to fund these things. Now, what's the difference between Virgin Space and Elon Musk, though? Virgin Space has the goal of having tourism in space. And you look at Elon Musk, his vision, he's got a vision much deeper than that. He's going to take us to the stars. That's the type of leader you want to follow compared to, hey, yeah, we're going to go up there, we're going to take billionaires up, we're going to put them in space, and they're going to have a good time, Virgin Space, versus, we're going to go up, we're going to mine asteroids. Pretty awesome. So.
Your brief slide on Vietnam was interesting to me.
there's people, and I don't want to talk too many. I talked to 40 people the day before the ACA bill, the ACA, what do you call it, Affordable Health Care Act came out. Nobody had read the bill, nobody, but they were compelled by leadership to vote on that. There's strong leaders in Washington that basically, if you don't vote for this, you will never see a bill hit the light of day, and you will never be at a committee. And there's a point where you vote for someone who was your representative, but they're actually owned by the leadership. That you might have a moderate you vote for, but they're told what to vote for. And that part is like, that's not what the Founding Fathers designed for. And it can go both sides. It's, if I'm a moderate, I should be able to vote my own conscience on these bills here, as opposed to always vote to the left or to the right. So that's one of those things I've noticed there. So, and most leaders, 90% of what the Democrats, this is talking U.S. politics now, the Republicans and Democrats, they agree on most things. You know, it's the differences that get paraded up at election time.
I was curious, but applying that to business, if doing business strategy, if you're compelled to, if you're seeing somebody that's compelled to go a certain direction because of business politics, you know, what have you observed about, you know, how people can see through that?
So, how would you rephrase that question? You understand? So, seeing through other people's politics, that they know the right thing to do, but they're not doing it, or they have the preconceived idea that we must do it this way. So I'm a chiropractor at a place that used to be a chiropractic college. Now that's one of 26 programs. So there's people who still want us to be a chiropractic college and act like that. It's like, no, that's a program. We have a broader reach to this, and we keep thinking like people want me to keep thinking like we're a chiropractic college. Those are the old days. Now we still have, that's our flagship program, and we want it to be the best in the world. But we have to think broader than that. I have thousands and thousands of alumni I need to look towards. And I don't know if I'm going the right direction for that. I know we're not. I can tell by your face. Any other questions that I might be able to say?
How does Cascade help you build those bridges between the silos?
How do we start? There was a strategic restructuring of my direct reports, because there's people who developed fiefdoms. They didn't want people in their business. So you're going to find there's certain leaders that tend to build a kingdom underneath them. They might be CFOs.
Easy.
But basically, that's, you know, I broke it up. What we did was I took the CFO role, who typically you know, handles the money and maybe do some other interactions. My money person only takes care of money. They're the fuel for the rest of the ship. The HR person takes care of personnel. I have an ops person and academics. And by taking this away, that this person cannot, the CFO cannot dictate where money goes without us all agreeing to it, going back to the strategic plan, we've taken that away, we've broken down that silo. I know some organizations, the CFO handles a lot of the operations and maybe it handles real estate dealings, but I'm big on keeping the money away from operations. That way we make those decisions and together on where it should go. So that's been beneficial to us. We also have just a really good team. That there's certain people that, this is one thing I learned last year, 2018, don't hire brilliant exit holes. Hire team players. I had two of the best neuroscientists in the world we hired. I couldn't get anything done. We created two master's degree programs. It was so hard to get anything done with these brilliant, they were truly world-renowned researchers, that we had to go to somebody else who was not as well known, but he was a team player. And we got so much more done with that. Don't hire brilliant jerks, and don't tolerate highly talented jerks. You know, they have to be a team player. And I learned it from an Australian. I was at a conference. This Australian academic was there. They had 4 campuses across Australia, and he articulated it to me while I was in the middle of this crisis. I go, he's exactly right. He did the same thing. He hired world-renowned leaders in these particular fields, and they were such arrogant people to deal with. He couldn't get anything done. Hired team players, and he had success.
Yeah, that's good. Well, Bill, thank you for your insights. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a safe flight back.
My
to Texas.
pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you.